Hey. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Virginia, and I'm here house sitting at my dear friend Carly's house. Thanks for the hat, Carly. I think it's pretty cool. Thank you to my friend Susie for this shirt. Shout out to my friend Chelsea, who I got this shirt with in Maine 10 years ago. Okay, I'm really excited. I've told you guys many times about the book, The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd, and I'm going to put a link to it in the about because this was a resource that came to me through my friend Kesia, and that came from Carolyn Elliott, who wrote Existential, Kink. I will also link to that down below. I'm going to link to this book, The Gene Keys, as well as a free test that you can take to get a little preview of your genetic profile on the Gene Keys website. It's been something super powerful for me. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about desire, and I'm going to be reading from the 30th gene key, which is called Celestial Fire. And the shadow of this gene key is desire, the gift is lightness, and the she or siddhi is rapture. So I'm going to read from what happens when we try to escape this desire. And it's a great paradox, right? I'll start here. So, somewhere deep within every human being, a very uncomfortable truth resides, that you can never transcend desire. Our denial of this truth is what causes us to live half-heartedly. We do not fully indulge our desire because it is too terrifying. Those who do so externally usually end in destroying themselves, while those who hold it back also destroy themselves on the inside. It seems then that desire has human beings outflanked and outgunned. Whatever we do, we're caught like rats in a maze. Even the most sophisticated esoteric traditions promise us transcendence from desire, but then warn us that our very desire to transcend in the first place will prevent such a state. What is one supposed to do with this information? What is the future of a race that is caught in such a paradox, if desire itself prevents us from ever evolving beyond desire? As ever, the answers lie within the higher frequencies of this 30th gene key. The repressive nature of desire, over serious. When desire is repressed, life force is also repressed, and this leads to a stiffening of one's whole being, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. We begin to take life very seriously. As we have seen, desire equates to fire and passion. When it isn't allowed to burn within us, our inner fire fizzles out. Many people deal with their desires in this way, particularly in repressive societies and religions. Over-seriousness manifests through religion itself, which almost always imposes moral laws over the top of our natural desires. One might even go so far as to say that the majority of human civilization has repressed desire and become over-serious. It is the hallmark of our modern world. The great fear within the 30th shadow is the fear of being burned by our feelings, a collective fear that has been repressed on a collective level. True feelings unleashed on a collective level might lead to anarchy. That is the fear that is held in check by the aspect of this 30th shadow. The reactive nature of the 30th shadow of desire, flippant. Those people in the world who indulge their desires without care almost always run the very real risk of being ostracized by society. They cannot subscribe to any moral framework and abhor all forms of religion or imposed control. They then become flippant about life as a reaction to that society. The result is that they often become embittered by the projections of the world and lash out by abandoning themselves even further into their desires. Just as the repressed nature wants to end desire through controlling it. The repressed nature wants to end desire through controlling it. The reactive nature wants to end desire by exhausting it. The result of this is that such people burn themselves out, and often early on in life. By totally externalizing all your desires, you are in fact becoming their victim. This kind of flippancy is akin to paganism, the extreme pole to organized religion. Just as one is repression, the other is reaction. And then I'll just read a little bit from talking about the gift, the 30th gift, lightness, the final desire. There are two possible human responses to a paradox. Either you become tense or you surrender to it. The mind has great difficulty with paradoxes because it is not built to handle them. It can only resolve things through logical reason. The higher mind, which is really akin to an awareness operating outside your brain and body, adores paradoxes because it knows that they represent truth. When you surrender to the helplessness of being a normal human being, then something remarkable occurs. You experience a shift in your frequency of your whole being. You begin to lighten up. The human mind is incredibly serious about life because it so wants to understand and control existence. The 30th gift, however, is a new operating wavelength for humanity, and it really involves a surrender that cannot be forced or faked. And of course, it's lightness, it's surrender. It's a surrender where you basically say, okay, I give up, I give in, do your worst to life. So what inspired me to start talking about this? Because I've talked about desire quite a bit on this channel, and it's something that I've been feeling a lot about, thinking a lot into. But what really inspired me to read this and to record this was this sentence. Just as the repressed nature wants to end desire through controlling it, the reactive nature wants to end desire through exhausting it. And that reminded me of myself. So, I love the act of smoking. And my favorite plants to commune with through the practice of smoking are tobacco and cannabis mixed together. Call it a spliff. And when I read that about desire, either the repressive nature wants to squelch desire by controlling it and not letting it happen, right? So not smoking. Or there is the reactive nature, which wants to exhaust desire by getting rid of it, doing it so much that you've exhausted it. And I feel in my own metaphor in that in my life is with smoking. And everyone has their own journey with everything. But for me, it's basically Peter, my dog Peter is barking. It's basically smoke 'em if you got 'em, right? And then don't smoke if you don't have it is the other side of that. So it's really, but it's the energy or intention that's coming from that for me, I'm fine if I don't have anything to smoke. It doesn't feel like an addiction to me in the sense of, at least for me, it's less about being addicted to the substance, and I think more about being addicted to the repression and control or the exhaustion. So being addicted to either that feeling that, oh, I'm beating desire because I'm not smoking, which, I'll go weeks, months without smoking, or then I will have tobacco and cannabis. And it's this feeling that I had never read it until that said it. It's this feeling that, oh, if I just exhaust it, if I just smoke everything I have, I'll get rid of the desire. And, another theme, I think, where this can be really prevalent, and especially in our society, Western society, and with women, is eating, right? So it's either that control of not eating or binge eating. I will get rid of this desire to eat by eating all the things. And with all of these acts, it's not that anything is right or wrong. There's nothing morally wrong with smoking. There's nothing morally wrong with plants, cannabis or tobacco, or with food, or with fasting. It's just the intention that you're bringing to it. But what I wanted to talk about is, again, you guys, this book has been hugely helpful for me. We think that we're going to get rid of desire one way or the other, either by controlling it and tricking ourselves into feeling like we're a good person because we're not giving in, or by exhausting it and, that flippancy of tricking ourselves into thinking nothing matters, so we might as well exhaust it, do it till it's gone. It's sort of that feeling of oh, I ate one piece of cake, I might as well eat the whole cake, and then maybe I won't want cake anymore. But what we are refusing to sit with is desire itself. And so on this journey, we begin to not be afraid of desire, have to pretend it's not there, or feel like something's wrong with us, because consciousness, nature, life, capital L, wants to experience itself in every single way. And the Gene Keys explains it like humans are basically a sensory organ of nature. And our desires, like, the joke's on us because we think something's wrong with us, or that it's up to us to like control our desires. In one way, it's actually more our mission here, if you will, to live out those desires. But what the Gene Keys suggest, and I love this, is that eventually it's not to repress the desires and overcome them or to live them out. They don't necessarily need to be lived out. It's to be with the desire itself. It's to be the desire. It's not to fulfill it, because that is what we learn on this journey with desire and it's fine to fulfill it or to not fulfill it, whatever stage you're at. It's just that what we eventually learn is that no matter how many times we fulfill our desires, no matter how many spliffs I smoke or don't smoke, so no matter how many times I repress my desire or exhaust and fulfill my desire, the hunger will always come back, and it's intrinsic to us. It's like the fire inside of ourselves, which I so often wish to ritualize with lighting a fire, smoking. The fire inside of ourselves is desire, and when we're willing to just be with it fully and not think that fulfilling it, just some instances of that, eating food, smoking something, buying something, having sex with someone, or even just going somewhere. I mean, whatever, climbing a mountain. I mean, it's the desires are not intrinsically good or bad. Life is neutral, and it wants to experience every single impulse. And, I think to a certain point, the fulfillment of every single impulse, but eventually we don't need to fulfill the desire for it to fuel us and burn us up inside. And it talks about that in the end, because the final desire is to transcend our desire. And how do we transcend anything? By becoming one with it. So, but this is not to say like that you want to rush to that experience. It's really just the practice. And it's not that you're a bad person if you repress it, or a good or give in to fulfill the desire. It's little by little being willing to be with our desires and stare straight in the face, feel into, become one with this truth that no matter how many desires we fulfill, that will never fulfill us. The fulfillment of us is to become one with our desire, which is to stop trying to get rid of it. And kind of the point Gene Keys makes as well is that like this desire, this feeling of ecstatic longing is part of what it is to be human. That's what drives us. It's not that something's wrong with us. It's the very heart of what we are. And we can't escape it either by repressing or fulfilling it. And I'm going to put a link to a recent blog that I published. It was just a little piece that I wrote while I was down in Mexico. And it's about longing. And I love the way that he talks about longing in the Gene Keys, because I wasn't really conscious of this when I wrote it, but the whole premise of the little blog post is that what I'm in love with is longing, not what I long for, basically, like this energy of longing. And that's kind of what he ends up saying in this 30th Gene Key is like, it's the very experience of desire, of this deep longing that is us. And at some point, we realize that it's not what we're longing for, because we think that will get us away from this pressure and intensity of longing, but going into the very kernel and crux and fire of that pressure and intensity of longing, that's it, not necessarily what we long for, although that's interesting too. And then the spirit of lightness and the spirit of play is kind of like that place where we have fun with our desires and what we desire in this tragic comedy that it's making out of our life. And we always also realize that it's a game. It's a game that life is playing to experience itself through these impulses and desires. And when we're willing to be there with them more deeply, rather than pretending they're not there or exhausting them, we start to reach these transcendental states of lightness and opening where we see that it's just a game, and then we still have fun with it. Because as long as we're here, our desires are sort of like, they're almost like the themes or the threads that weave the story of our life. And eventually it's just to be able to be with them and see them and let them either play out or not, and be in that fire more and more, seeing the beauty that which we were so afraid would burn us up and destroy us is actually what burns up our smaller selves and allows us to rise from the ashes and see from that larger perspective that desire is like a function of nature, neither good nor bad. And when it is become one with, then we become one with life's desire to experience itself. But we don't get caught up in feeling like we need to it's like making desire go away would be to make ourselves go away, and eventually our little selves, that will happen. But what life, that purifying fire, happens when we are just with our desires. And again, maybe they end up getting fulfilled, maybe not, but that's not the point. The point is to be willing to go into that tension and that fire and find that within that is the light and the openness and redemption. So I would love to hear what, like, some tangible examples of desire for you, and how maybe you've tried to repress it or tried to exhaust it, and what happens in those times when you just realize that, like, the desire itself is it. All right. I'll talk to you soon, and I will link to everything down below.